Dumbledore is one of the most controversial characters in all of Harry Potter, and as time goes on, he only gets surrounded in more and more controversy. From people saying that Dumbledore never truly loved anybody, and that he's just as bad as Voldemort, and I'm here to clear the air about that. In Dumbledore's teen years, he ran around with Gellert Grindelwald, and used to align more with Salazar Slytherin's beliefs, if you get what I'm saying.
Filthy little mudblood.
And I think when people hear that about his childhood, they immediately assume that Dumbledore has just always been bad. He's always done terrible things. When we don't even know what he ever actually did as a child. We don't have any concrete proof of what has happened. So I don't think it's fair to judge his entire character off of those things he might have or might not have done when he was a child. Now that isn't the only reason why people have this negative stigma with Dumbledore, or some believe he's actually evil or never cared about Harry, let alone the other students in the school. And it's because of what we know of him, Ariana, and Aberforth. Now the way we hear from Aberforth is he always left him and Ariana alone as soon as he was old enough and good enough to start traveling the world, and he kind of put his family in the back seat to go travel around with Grindelwald. And as we all know, Dumbledore, Aberforth, and Grindelwald all get into a duel, and one of their spells, we don't know which ones, but one of their spells ends up killing Ariana. Now, a lot of people think it's because of Dumbledore that Ariana died, and it was his spell that hit Ariana, but we don't know for sure. It's all speculation, so that's not a fair point to use against him for Dumbledore being evil. What I think people don't remember about this altercation is that Dumbledore didn't initiate anything. The arguing was initially between Aberforth and Grindelwald, and it's once Grindelwald tried to go at Aberforth that Dumbledore stepped in to protect his brother. And that's a key part. He stepped in to protect his brother. He immediately chose his family over his best friend. And I believe you shouldn't judge anybody, but you especially shouldn't judge anybody when they're kids. They were kids. Or young adults, whatever you want to say, but they're very young. Still a lot to learn. We shouldn't hold this over Dumbledore when we know his many years after his teenage years, after him being a kid, are filled with amazing things he's done, and the whole wizarding world loves him. Unless you're an evil Death Eater, then you don't love him. Now let's skip ahead all the way into the main events of Harry Potter, which is Harry Potter 1 through 7, or Sorcerer's Stone through Deathly Hallows. Another problem I see people have with Dumbledore is that he didn't kill Voldemort in the first Wizarding War. What? How does Dumbledore not stopping the greatest dark wizard and strongest dark wizard of all time make him evil? Like, that genuinely doesn't make any sense. I know that kind of argument is more just like people not liking Dumbledore for whatever weird reason they have. People look at things differently. I genuinely haven't heard good arguments of why Dumbledore is just an evil person or why he didn't really care about Harry at all. Now picture this. Dumbledore finds out that Harry going to stay with his only living relatives will keep Harry alive and safe from harm up until he becomes of age, which is 17 years old in the wizarding world, right? That's all nice. Dumbledore, thank you. That's so thoughtful of you. Anybody else might have given him to maybe stay at Hogwarts, or maybe stay somewhere with another trusted, strong adult. Maybe stay with the Minister of Magic. But you, Dumbledore, you were thoughtful enough and knowledgeable enough to know that the safest place for Harry, although may not the best, but the safest place to keep him alive is with his aunt and uncle, regardless of his relationship with them. No. A lot of people see Harry staying with the Dursleys as the worst thing ever. Yes, it might not have been pleasant for Harry. Actually, no, it was torment for Harry for those first 11 years of him staying with them. It was still bad those years after, but he only had to stay there for, what, 2 months, a month and a half, because he usually went with the Weasleys, so not that long. But what people fail to think about or remember is that Harry had to stay with the Dursleys. It wasn't like a choice. If he stayed with anyone else, he would have been getting constantly attacked. If he stayed with Sirius, he'd be clipped. Not that that was really ever a choice, but if it was, let's say Wormtail did get captured and Sirius's name did get cleared, Harry would never have been safe. Now you might say they could have still did the same thing with Grimmauld Place and had a secret keeper. Do you see what happened? Do you see what happened with Creature? And even then, the Death Eaters still, we don't ever know for sure, but in Deathly Hallows, when Harry, Ron, and Hermione were apparating back and the Death Eater latched onto them, they saw the place. So we don't know for sure if they were able to get in or if they were able to officially find it, but the Death Eaters did see. or we think they did, or Hermione thinks they did, whatever. So that plan wouldn't have worked forever. If anyone has anything against Dumbledore having Harry stay at the Dursleys, let me know in the comments. Let me know your thought process behind that. I genuinely want to know why and how there's a problem with that. Or just let me know if you know of any other place that would have been better, that would have kept Harry alive with the same amount of security and safety that he had at the Dursleys. Because at the Dursleys, no one could find him. Nobody. Like, even with the trace on him, I still believe the reason why Voldemort had to wait until he was 17, even after he got some people in the Ministry, was because they still couldn't find out where he lived. They physically couldn't. Then we got the old Dumbledore was just using Snape. And that Snape was so innocent, and Dumbledore is just so mean and terrible for using Snape the way he did and didn't even care about him. Shut up! What? Do you know what Snape did? Y'all do know that the way the movies portrayed Snape is not fully how he was. Like, the movies like took every good part about Snape and left out everything else. Like, Snape is so terrible in the books to everybody. Well, everyone besides teachers. Think of like Miss Trunchbull from Matilda. That's how he is to all the kids. I'm no exaggeration. I'm serious.
Some rats are gonna die today.
Dumbledore offered a Death Eater shelter and safety for however many years was it? Was it 17 years? 16 years? 15? Well, I think it was 16 years, man. He offered him shelter and safety for that long. He helped him escape from being put in Azkaban by vouching for Snape, telling everyone that he was an informant. I mean, he did become an informant, but it was only after Snape went to go beg Dumbledore to help protect Lily and James. Actually, no. It wasn't even Lily and James, y'all. It wasn't. Y'all think Dumbledore using Snape is so bad because of that one scene where Dumbledore asked Snape what's he going to do for him if he's to help Lily and James? You know he didn't really mean that, right? Like, he wasn't not going to help the Potters unless Snape helped him. You know that, right? He was already going to help them. He already had stuff in place with the secret keepers and all that stuff. He already had that in place. Snape didn't know that. And let me tell y'all another secret about Snape. Ready? He didn't care about saving anybody but Lily. I know that might be hard for some of y'all to hear, but when he went to he only asked Voldemort to spare Lily. He didn't ask nothing about James. He could have. And Dumbledore, I believe in the book, he only asked to save Lily from Dumbledore as well. He don't care about James and Harry. Y'all put Snape on this high pedestal, but he's one of the most selfish, rude, nasty characters in Harry Potter. Now, I'm not saying this out of hate. I'm saying this out of truth. So when you try to come at Dumbledore for using Snape, you gotta realize the whole context. You gotta know what Snape has done also. You gotta realize why Dumbledore is saying the certain things he does. You can take anything out of context and make something seem like something it's not. That's what a lot of people do for Dumbledore. Now, I hear a lot that Dumbledore didn't care for any students at all, and he just had a favorite, which was Harry. Not true whatsoever. And I'm going to give y'all two examples of this. The first one comes in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. When Dumbledore's army finally gets outed by Marietta, Cho Chang's best friend, Dolores Umbridge takes Marietta and some other Aurors and Percy to Dumbledore's office to confront him and take him to Azkaban for trying to make an army against the Ministry. Fudge was extremely dumb, bro. That's all I can explain for that one. Bro thought Dumbledore was making an army of kids to rise against the Ministry. Are we serious? Marietta was about to expose the entirety of what she told to Dolores Umbridge to Fudge in front of Dumbledore to get Dumbledore taken to Azkaban. Kingsley very quickly, though, modified her memory so she wouldn't say anything. And after that, Dolores Umbridge got furious and started shaking her, telling her to say something and don't be scared. Dumbledore then immediately stood up, pointed his wand, and said, "While I'm headmaster, I will not allow you to manhandle my students." Now, that don't show that he actually cares about his students and loves his students. That's not Harry. I don't know what does. Now, the biggest moment for me that shows that he cares about his students is when he still tries to save Draco Malfoy on top of the tower. He tries to get Draco to come back to them and leave the Death Eaters while Draco's trying to kill him. Now, you can say this is not a big feat and that Dumbledore was just trying to save his own life, but Dumbledore knew Draco was not going to do anything. And if you're trying to tell me that Dumbledore is really caught off guard by Draco, no. He let himself get disarmed because he knew Snape was about to come up and kill him, and he wanted to make it look better for Draco. whatever. He could have stopped Draco if he wanted to. He just knew that was his time to go once Snape got up there to finish the job in front of the other Death Eaters. Now, if you want to look too far deep into it, like you want to look too deep and think you're smart and say that he let Draco disarm him to be able to use that against Voldemort in the future when Harry's fighting him, no. You're too deep. But while Draco had his wand pointed at Dumbledore, threatening to kill him, Dumbledore was just pleading with him the whole time to stop this madness and that he can have people watch him under 24-hour protection, whatever. He could protect Draco. He could hide him and his entire family. He was saying that to his face while he's opposing death. And he's always been like that. He's always treated all the students fairly, regardless of who their parents are or anything. Dumbledore knows Lucius is still into the dark arts and doing weird stuff and threatening people up at the ministry and bribing people and all that stuff. He knows what he's doing. But he doesn't treat his kid any different. He knows Draco and the other Death Eaters' kids are influenced by their families. He cares. Now we get to the big one. The main reason people think Dumbledore is evil. People think Dumbledore doesn't care about anyone, especially Harry. It's for the whole pig for slaughter scene. When we find out that Dumbledore has carefully and meticulously planned this stuff out for Harry, and he eventually found out that Harry was going to have to die. All very sad. But doesn't make him evil. It doesn't make him cold. It doesn't make him heartless. The biggest argument or the biggest reason I give to why Dumbledore did what he did, or why Dumbledore is not cold and heartless for knowing that Harry had to die, is because he knew Harry would come back. The only reason he didn't tell Harry that Harry had to die, because if Harry knew, it wouldn't work. The only reason why Harry was able to come back from the dead or whatever, or tank another Avada Kedavra, is because of the love protecting charm that Lily put on Harry. You see, while Harry going and selflessly sacrificing himself, thinking he's going to die, he activated that magic again. So when Voldemort killed him, he only killed the evil part inside of him, which was the piece of Voldemort that was inside of Harry, that latched on to Harry. That's the only part that Voldemort killed when he used the killing curse on Harry. Dumbledore did all these things to protect Harry. He prepared him in the best way he could with the time he had. He gave Harry the best possible chance to defeat Voldemort. You can't ask for much more than that. Yes, he made some mistakes in not telling Harry some information sometimes, like in Order of the Phoenix when he just ignored Harry the whole year because he thought Voldemort could see inside of him and see what he was doing.
Look at me!
But everyone makes mistakes. Nobody is perfect. I think people expect that of Dumbledore because he's known as the greatest wizard in the world. And something that kind of goes along with the whole pig for slaughter thing, that whole scene with Snape, the movie kind of messed up people's perception of Dumbledore with that specific scene alone, because not only did people start reading into the pig for slaughter thing and start thinking like, dang, Dumbledore is really evil, like he's more messed up than I thought, like he really did plan out Harry's death. But I think it's mainly the delivery that makes people think that Dumbledore never cared for Harry. You see, when Dumbledore says,
"Don't tell me now that you've grown to care for the boy."
You see, Dumbledore's not saying, why do you care for him, Snape, after all we've been through, after us being heartless and knowing that he's going to die and all that. He's not saying that. He's genuinely asking Snape, after all this time of you verbally abusing Harry, bullying him, trying to get him kicked out of school, and taking every possible chance you get to humiliate Harry, now you want to say you actually care for him? That's what he's saying. Dumbledore still cares for Harry. Imagine you're at a job and you have this coworker that you just despise for some reason. No, for no reason. And you're always trying to do something to get them fired. You're always talking about them behind their back. You're always making fun of them any chance you get. And then one day they do get fired for something that they had nothing to do with. And then all of a sudden you're like, dang, I feel bad for them. Why do you feel? You were just doing the same thing. Like, hey, that might have been a bad comparison, but you know what I'm trying to say. At the end of the day, we all make mistakes. And no matter if you're powerful and strong or weak and frail, you should be allowed room to do so. Dumbledore might not be innocent, but none of us are. At the end of the day, he's just a man trying to do the best with what he has. So even if you don't agree with any of the points I've made, can't argue with that. That's all I got for y'all today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Dumbledore only ever cared for himself, or am I just chatting? I'm out.